Hey there, Internet. Welcome to another episode of the John Graves Show. And today, I was kind of, I saw the Icy Rhythms video today. I've never played Resident Evil 4. And seriously, really, dude, it's no big deal if you haven't played Resident Evil 4. You know what I mean? You can pick it up whenever, pick it up down the road. If you're a fan, go ahead and play it. It's a fun game. Now, it kind of got me thinking about, like, some people who kind of say that Resident Evil 4 is a bad game because as a Resident Evil game, it kind of stands to say that it actually set the foundation for Resident Evil 5 and 6 for being terrible games and not necessarily living up to what the original Resident Evil games were. Now, I never touched on this, or at least I don't think I have. If I have, please tell me. But the original 3 Resident Evil, well, the original 4, 5, 6, 7. See, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Veronica, Remake, 0. All those games, they do kind of have the original tank controls. Now, for Resident Evil, the difference is from those is just that the camera is behind the character, making it easier to move and navigate the area. You still basically have the same old controls, except for in 4, when you shoot it, when you stun an enemy and you run up on them, you can actually do like a physical attack, which is kind of the only real difference in the game. And also, Resident Evil 4 is way more like straight through linear, whereas all the other games, you kind of were in you were essentially in an area in which that you had to find items and kind of had to progress further in this small little circulated area. So really for Resident Evil 2 is way more linear as well, but which that one is praised as being one of the better Resident Evil games, and 3 is kind of a little bit more linear than the other ones, except for you kind of have to deal with the tyrant as you play on. You kind of have to deal with Nemesis as you progress throughout the game, fighting him numerous times and having to deal with plenty of other things. Now, seriously, I do got to ask the question. It's like, what makes Resident Evil 4 a failure as a Resident Evil game over the other ones? Because I've seen like a few videos, or at least like I remember one from this dude named Benzai, and seriously, his thing was that the original Resident Evils were essentially supposed to be a realistic game. But then again, me using my brain, I'm like, what's so realistic about like somebody finding like a fully loaded magazine in a bird cage? Who does that? It's like, yeah, I can understand that you killing enemies and they don't drop ammo. I can understand that in the original ones, and it happened in Resident Evil 4, making it feel more like a video game. But yeah, I can understand that. But for a lot of people who do say that Resident Evil 4 is a terrible game, is because again, it is easier to play than the original ones, and also it's like actually playing the game. It's actually a little bit easier to play Resident Evil 4 than it is to play the original ones, because again, the original ones weren't necessarily all about killing enemies. It was mostly about just progressing throughout the area and trying to work through these puzzles. And what I kind of started thinking about was that Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Revelations, Resident Evil 5, Lost in Nightmares, all those were really fucking good at kind of setting a precedent of saying like, yeah, you can actually make a good Resident Evil game using using this brand new format, and actually kind of making it interesting to kind of making the game scary, also making it a pretty good puzzle game, and also making it so that you have to have to survive in this area without necessarily dying per se. And And kind of what I started thinking about was after Resident Evil 4, there were only 2 Resident Evil games which honestly tried to copy its formula, and people really kind of treated those games as if they were plagues against the thing. Now, sure, I know a lot of people who really dislike Final Fantasy 13. I mean, like, I kind of like it, but at the same time, it's like Final Fantasy 13 gets a bad rap because it was a hyped up game which kind of didn't do right from Jump Street, and also its sequel kind of didn't do good, and seriously from kind of and I know a lot of people are marking this as the death of Final Fantasy, but seriously, it's only one bad series, really. You know, I mean, sure, they all kind of have their little things, and this isn't even me getting into the whole Final Fantasy 7 and 6 thing, which honestly, for everyone who constantly keeps on saying that Final Fantasy 6 is by far the greatest Resident Evil game ever, I mean, the greatest Final Fantasy game ever, I'm like, seriously, just chill, all right? If people like 7 more than 6, I will make a video about that. But yeah, you know, if people like 7 more than 6, just calm down and let them enjoy their thing. Don't be a buzzkill. But back onto back onto Resident Evil. I've noticed that like there's only 5 and 6, and people, I can understand if you don't like 6. It's actually a rather valid argument because. However, it's not really all that much of a valid argument, really, because it's like they gave you the zombies back, they gave you Leon, and they gave you everybody else back. They gave you, you know, the whole, well, Jill wasn't in that one, but yeah, man, they kind of gave you like Chris and Leon and Ada and everybody else, even Sherry. They, you know what I mean, they kind of continued on, man, talking about Wesker's son and everything. I mean, like, this pretty much should have been gold for people who claim to be Resident Evil fans and seriously love Resident Evil, because they did give you everything that you kind of equate Resident Evil to, which is zombies and zombie dogs, which is the silliest complaint that I've heard ever. Is like, Resident Evil 4 isn't a Resident Evil game because they don't have zombies in it. I'm kind of going onto a rant there, but yeah, that's kind of a silly thing to me. And also, for 5 really wasn't all that bad. I mean, the only difference with 5 is just the fact that, unlike all of the other Resident Evil games, we kind of had a singular, we kind of stayed within the area for like a certain time, which is something, because like I feel like I figured out the Resident Evil plan before I end this up. I'm about to take this last 30 seconds to talk about it, but I've said this in a video before. What is the strongest thing, man, for any Resident Evil game? It is its atmosphere. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, all of the tank controlled ones, they all had an atmosphere to them. Resident Evil 0 was easier than most and kind of confused the story a little bit, but seriously, for Resident Evil 4, it had an atmosphere. For Resident Evil Revelations, it had an atmosphere. For Resident Evil Lost in Nightmares, for Resident Evil 5, the little add-on for that, it had an atmosphere. For all of the other Resident Evil games, for 6, kind of really didn't build on this atmosphere all that much if you constantly keep moving from one area to the next. And the same thing can be said for Resident Evil 5, with Resident Evil 4 setting a precedent for how Leon can take down most of these enemies without necessarily needing any of the equipment they have, and he's smaller and way more agile. It's something that pretty much kind of hurt some people's expectations for the Resident Evil thing, but seriously, it's not dead, and I probably wouldn't call it anything terrible. The thing is, though, is that it's just 2 games. If they just focused on kind of just building an atmosphere and honestly trying to get their narrative across without them rushing through it, and seriously, the co-op really doesn't hurt any of that. But yeah, that's kind of what I think on the matter. What do you guys think of that? I know that I rambled on for 10 minutes, and yeah, man, you know, it happens from time to time. But yeah, Please let me know what you think down there in the comment section. I'll see you guys on the next John Grave show. Please keep watching anime and keep playing video games. I'm out.